My name is Jessica, 32 years old, and the only adopted child in the Parker family. I have spent my entire life trying to fit in to be accepted as one of them. Last Sunday at dinner, I excitedly mentioned the upcoming cruise. My sister Natalie snorted, "Oh, you thought you were coming." My dad Richard grinned, adding, "It is for real family." I just nodded and helped clear the plates, swallowing my hurt. If you know what it feels like to be excluded by those who should love you most, let me know where you are watching from, and subscribe to join my journey of healing. Growing up as the adopted child in the Parker family shaped my entire identity. I came into their lives when I was 3 years old, a little girl with big brown eyes and unruly dark hair, nothing like the blonde, blue-eyed biological children my parents already had. From the beginning, I felt like I had to earn my place at the table, both literally and figuratively. My adoptive parents, Richard and Eleanor Parker, had 3 biological children: Natalie, who was 7 when I arrived, Michael, who was 5, and Ashley, who was barely 1. The family photos that lined our hallway told the story clearly enough. There were dozens of pictures from before I arrived. The perfect American family of 5. After my adoption, the photos became more sparse, and I was often positioned at the edge as if I could be easily cropped out if desired. Growing up, there were always subtle exclusions and jokes about me being different. "Well, we do not know where she gets that from," my father would say, when I did something they considered strange. Or blood will tell when Natalie, Michael, and Ashley shared similar traits or interests that I did not possess. These comments were always delivered with a smile, as if the emotional punch they packed could be softened by pretending they were humorous observations rather than rejections. I responded by becoming an overachiever. Perfect grades, captain of the debate team, volunteer work every weekend. I thought if I could just be exceptional enough, they would finally see me as worthy of full inclusion in the family. I worked twice as hard to receive half the recognition my siblings got for minimal effort. When Michael got a B- in algebra, there was celebration and ice cream. When I was valedictorian, my father remarked that I must have had good genes from somewhere. The pattern continued into adulthood. Family gatherings were exercises in subtle exclusion. Inside jokes, I was not privy to reminiscences about times before I joined the family, subtle references to their shared genetics. I kept showing up anyway, bringing homemade dishes, giving thoughtful gifts, trying to carve out some small place for myself. When my marriage to Daniel fell apart 8 months ago, something shifted. My family seemed more supportive than they had ever been. My mother called regularly to check on me. My father helped me move into my new apartment. Even Natalie, who had always been the most openly hostile, invited me for coffee and shopping. I allowed myself to hope that perhaps my divorce had humanized me in their eyes. That maybe finally they could see me as someone who belonged. The Parker family instituted monthly family dinners, supposedly to strengthen our bonds. I threw myself into these gatherings with renewed enthusiasm, bringing my famous apple pies, engaging genuinely with my nieces and nephews, making sincere efforts to connect with my siblings. For the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope that I might finally be accepted. It was at the Easter gathering 2 months ago that I first heard talk about a big family vacation. My parents were discussing Caribbean destinations, comparing cruise lines and itineraries. Natalie was adamant about wanting a ship with good childcare options for her kids. Michael and his wife Lauren were excited about the scuba diving opportunities. Ashley, always the foodie, was looking forward to the all-you-can-eat buffets. No one explicitly told me I was included, but no one said I was not either. When I asked about dates, my mother gave me a vague answer about sometime in June. When I mentioned how long it had been since I had taken a real vacation, my father nodded and said something about everyone needing a break sometimes. I interpreted their responses as positive signs. Why would they discuss all these details in front of me if I was not meant to be part of the plan? I began researching Caribbean ports of call in my free time, reading blog posts about the best excursions and must-see attractions. I went shopping for new swimwear and summer clothes, treating myself to a new sundress and sandals specifically for the trip. I even set aside vacation days at my graphic design job, telling my boss I would be gone for the second week of June. I texted my siblings about excursion options, sending links to swimming with dolphins in Jamaica and ziplining through the rainforest in St. Lucia. Michael did not respond at all. Ashley sent back a thumbs-up emoji. Natalie replied with a vague, "looks cool." Again, I took their non-committal responses as positive signs. We had never been a family that communicated well after all. As the departure date grew closer, my excitement built. This cruise would be the perfect opportunity to cement the new, improved family dynamic. Away from the stresses of work and everyday life, perhaps we could truly bond. I imagined lazy days by the pool, laughing together over drinks with little umbrellas, creating the kinds of shared memories I had always yearned for. For once, I allowed myself to believe that I would be fully included in a Parker family event. The Sunday family dinner was held at my parents' suburban home, as it had been every month since my divorce. Their house was a sprawling colonial style, with a manicured lawn and flower beds that my mother tended with religious devotion. Inside, the formal dining room had barely changed since my childhood. The same heavy oak table and matching chairs. The same china cabinet displaying wedding gifts that were rarely used. The same wall of family photos chronicling birthdays, graduations, and vacations, none featuring me prominently. I arrived early, carrying my contribution to the meal, my apple pie made from a recipe I had perfected over years of trying to win approval through food. The house smelled of roasting chicken and garlic, my mother's signature Sunday dinner. In the kitchen, Eleanor was fussing over side dishes while my father watched a baseball game in the adjacent family room. "Need any help, Mom?" I offered, setting my pie on the counter. No, I have got it under control," she said, barely looking up from the potatoes she was mashing. "But thank you for bringing dessert." By 6 o'clock, everyone had arrived. Natalie and her husband James with their 3 children, Michael and Lauren with their twins. Ashley, perpetually single and proud of it. The noise level rose as the children chased each other through the house. My father yelled at the television, and my siblings caught up on gossip. When we finally sat down to eat, the conversation inevitably turned to the upcoming cruise. It was only a week away now, and the excitement was palpable. "I finally got those waterproof cases for our phones," Michael announced, passing the bowl of mashed potatoes to Lauren. "Now we can take underwater pictures when we go snorkeling." "Mom, did you pack my Finding Nemo swimsuit?" Natalie's 6-year-old daughter Emma asked. "Yes, sweetie. It is already in your suitcase," Natalie replied, cutting her chicken into tiny pieces. "I printed out all our boarding passes last night," my father announced proudly. "Everything is ready to go. I even ordered the transportation to the airport." I smiled, feeling a warm glow of anticipation. After all these years of feeling like an outsider, I was finally going to be part of a real family vacation. I had been so careful not to ask too many direct questions, fearing that somehow I would jinx my inclusion. But now, with the trip just days away, and all the preparations being discussed so openly, I felt secure enough to join the conversation. "I am really excited for the cruise," I said, smiling around the table. "I have been reading about that stop in Barbados. The beaches are supposed to be amazing." The silence that fell was sudden and complete. Forks paused midway to mouths. My mother's face froze in an expression of dismay. My father and Michael exchanged glances. Then Natalie snorted a harsh sound that cut through the silence like a knife. "Oh, you thought you were coming." Her voice dripped with mockery. My father's face transformed into a cruel grin I had seen many times before, usually right before he delivered some joke at my expense. "It is for real family," he said, emphasizing the word real in a way that made its meaning unmistakable. "Blood family, not me." The dining room seemed to tilt around me. My mother stared fixedly at her plate, refusing to meet my eyes. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but said nothing. Only Lauren, his wife, looked genuinely shocked, her mouth opening slightly as she glanced between my father and me. Natalie's children giggled, Not understanding the cruelty, but picking up on the adult tension, Ashley took a large gulp of her wine, suddenly very interested in the pattern on the tablecloth. I felt the blow physically, my stomach dropping my cheeks, burning hot, then cold. A strange buzzing filled my ears, and I had the sensation of floating slightly above the scene, watching myself sit frozen at the table. In that dissociated state, memories flashed through my mind with perfect clarity, being left with a babysitter while the family went to Disney World when I was 9. Not being included in the siblings' photo at Natalie's wedding. My father introducing Michael and Ashley as my son and daughter at his retirement party, with no mention of me standing right there. "Could someone pass the gravy?" I heard myself say, my voice sounding distant and artificially calm. The conversation slowly resumed around me, moving on to other topics. I nodded and smiled in all the right places, but I was no longer present. I had retreated deep inside myself to the place I had built over decades of similar moments, a protected core where their rejections could not quite reach. When dinner ended, I helped clear the plates, as I always did. In the kitchen, my mother made a weak attempt at apology. "Jessie, I am sorry about. You know," she murmured, rinsing a plate. "We just thought with everything you have been going through with the divorce, you would not want to." "It is fine," I cut her off, not trusting myself to hear whatever excuse she had prepared. "I understand." But I did not understand. Not really. What I understood was that after 30 years, after all my efforts and hopes, nothing had changed. I would always be the outsider, the not quite family member, the asterisk in the Parker family story. Natalie made no attempt at apology. Instead, she continued to make snide remarks as we cleaned up. "We would have invited you," she said, not sounding sorry at all, "but the cabins only sleep 4, and we needed the space for the kids." I knew this was a lie. The cruise line's website, which I had studied extensively, offered many cabin configurations. My father remained oblivious to the harm he had caused, or perhaps he simply did not care. He wandered into the kitchen to grab another beer, clapping me on the shoulder as he passed. "Next time, kiddo," he said, as if he were promising to take me to the movies, not acknowledging that he had just publicly excluded me from a family vacation. I left as soon as I reasonably could, making an excuse about an early meeting the next day. I hugged everyone goodbye, played my part to the end. But as I drove away from the house, the first tears began to slip down my cheeks. By the time I reached the end of the street, I could barely see through the blur. I had to pull over on an empty stretch of road, my hands shaking too badly to drive safely. There, alone in my car with only the sound of distant traffic for company, I let out a scream that had been building for 30 years. A primal, guttural sound of rage and hurt and betrayal that left my throat raw and my body trembling. Then I cried, until there were no tears left, only the hollow ache of a wound that would never fully heal. I do not remember the drive home. Somehow I made it back to my apartment, a small one-bedroom, in a converted Victorian house, across town from my parents' suburban enclave. I collapsed, just inside the door, still wearing my dinner clothes, a heap of hurt on the hardwood floor. The flashbacks came in waves, each memory of exclusion hitting with fresh pain. The time my parents forgot to include me in the family Christmas card photo when I was 12. The summer they sent Natalie, Michael, and Ashley to sleepaway camp, but told me there was not enough money for me to go too. The family reunion where a distant cousin asked if I was a neighbor's child because I looked nothing like the rest of the Parkers. I do not know how long I lay there, but eventually I pulled myself together enough to call Sarah my best friend since college, and the person who had been my rock throughout the divorce. They did what Sarah's outrage was immediate and satisfying. "I am coming over. Right now. With wine." 20 minutes later, she was at my door with not 1 but 2 bottles of Merlot and a fierce, protective energy that made me feel less alone. She listened as I poured out the whole story, her expression growing darker with each detail. "This is not okay, Jess," she said firmly when I had finished. "This is emotional abuse. You know that, right?" I shrugged, still reluctant to label my family's behavior so harshly. They have always been this way. I should be used to it by now. No, Sarah insisted, refilling my glass. You should not have to get used to being treated like you do not matter. You are their daughter, for God's sake. We moved to my small living room sofa, and Sarah insisted we analyze the pattern objectively. She grabbed a notepad and made me list every family-only event I had been excluded from over the years. The list grew longer than even I had realized. Vacations, celebrations, even regular gatherings that somehow slipped their minds to tell me about. Look at this, Sarah said, tapping the list with her pen. This is not accidental. This is systematic. I had to admit she was right. And as we talked, I began to see another pattern. How Natalie had always been the ringleader, with my parents, particularly my father, following her lead. Michael and Ashley were more passive participants, rarely initiating the exclusion but seldom standing up for me either. And what about your part in this? Sarah asked gently. My part. Honey, you keep accepting this treatment. You keep showing up with your perfect apple pies and your hopeful heart, letting them hurt you over and over. Her words stung, but I knew she was right. I had spent my life being the family doormat, so desperate for crumbs of affection that I kept coming back for more abuse. As the wine loosened our tongues and the hour grew later, my sadness began to transform into something else: anger. White, hot, righteous anger that had been suppressed for decades. Let me see those texts from them again, Sarah said. I pulled out my phone, and we scrolled through months of messages with new eyes. The vague responses to my direct questions about the cruise. The group chat I had been accidentally included in, where they discussed shore excursions without acknowledging my comments. The way conversation would mysteriously die whenever I joined in. Wait, Sarah said suddenly, grabbing my phone. Your dad's email is still logged in on your browser. It was true. Richard had used my laptop to make some online purchases when he was helping me move after the divorce. He had accessed his email and apparently never logged out. I should not. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the screen. Just look, Sarah urged. If there is nothing there, no harm done. I clicked on his email and found a folder labeled Cruise 2024. Inside were all the booking confirmations: 7 flight tickets, 3 cabins on Royal Caribbean's Symphony of the Seas reservations, for shore excursions, even transportation to and from the airport. Holy shit, Sarah whispered. You have access to everything. And I did. Every confirmation number, every itinerary detail, every payment receipt. My father had saved all his passwords in my browser too, which meant I could log into the airline website, the cruise portal, everything. You could cancel it all, Sarah said, not quite joking. The thought sent a thrill of both fear and satisfaction through me. Could I? Would I? Should I? I could never, I said, but I did not close the browser. Why not? Sarah challenged. They have been hurting you your entire life. Maybe it is time they felt a fraction of the pain they have caused you. I sat silently considering. The moral implications felt huge. This would be actively causing harm, not just standing up for myself. This would be revenge. I need to think about this, I said finally. Sarah nodded, understanding. Whatever you decide, I am with you. But Jessica, at some point, you have to stop being the bigger person. They are counting on that. They know you will take whatever they dish out because you always have. After Sarah left, I sat alone in my darkened apartment, staring at my father's email. I was about to close the browser and try to move on with my life when I noticed another folder labeled Family Stuff. Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked. Inside was an email thread between my father, Natalie, and Michael, with the subject line, Recruise Logistics, Jessica not included, for me. I clicked it open and felt my blood run cold. Dad, make sure Jessica does not find out the actual departure date Natalie had written. She might show up at the airport and try to guilt us into taking her. My father had replied, Do not worry. She believes we are leaving on the 15th, not the 12th. By the time she figures it out, we will be at sea. And then, most hurtfully of all, Michael the brother, who I thought was merely a passive participant, had written, "Remember when she crashed Ashley's graduation party by showing up early to help? So awkward having to pretend we wanted her there, lol." Something broke inside me as I read those words. Some last tenuous thread of familial loyalty snapped clean. If they could plan so deliberately to deceive me, if they could laugh about my earnest attempts to be included, then perhaps they deserved a taste of their own medicine. I took a deep breath and opened a new spreadsheet. It was time to plan. The spreadsheet became my battle plan. I created tabs for each aspect of their vacation: flights, cruise bookings, excursions, airport transfers. I meticulously documented every confirmation number, every customer service, phone number, every cancellation policy. I discovered that most of the bookings could be modified or canceled online without ever needing to speak to a representative. Those that required phone calls could be handled during business hours when my family would be at work. The cruise line required the lead passenger, my father, to make any changes, but with access to his email and all his security questions: mother's, maiden name, first pet, high school mascot, all information I knew I could easily impersonate him if necessary. I researched the legal implications carefully. Technically, accessing someone else's accounts without permission could be considered unauthorized access. But my father had used my computer, saved his passwords, and never logged out. I made sure to document this with screenshots just in case. And I would not be stealing anything, merely canceling reservations and returning the money to the original payment methods. The timing would be crucial. Cancel too early, and they might have time to rebook. Cancel too late, and the refunds might not process. I needed to maximize impact without crossing into territory that could get me into serious trouble. I decided on a plan. I would wait until 3 days before their departure, then systematically dismantle their carefully planned vacation piece by piece. Close enough that rebooking would be difficult and expensive, but not so last minute that they would lose all their money. I wanted them inconvenienced, not financially ruined. The night I chose to execute my plan, I called in sick to work the next day. This would be an operation requiring my full attention, and I needed to be available to deal with any complications that arose. I ordered takeout, made a pot of strong coffee, and set up my laptop at my dining table. At 11 o'clock, when I knew everyone in my family would be asleep, I began. I started with the smallest items: the airport transfers, the dinner reservations at specialty restaurants on the ship, the cabana rentals on the cruise line's private island, small dominoes that would start to fall. Next came the shore excursions. The dolphin swim in Jamaica, the zip lining in St. Lucia, the catamaran snorkel trip in Barbados. One by one I canceled them all, watching as confirmation emails arrived in my father's inbox, which I promptly deleted. My hands were steady, but my heart raced. With each cancellation, I half expected a phone to ring, for someone to somehow sense what I was doing. But the night remained quiet. Sarah texted once to check on me, and I sent back a simple thumbs-up emoji. The cruise booking was next. This would be the most complex, as it required logging into the Royal Caribbean site and navigating through several confirmation screens. The system asked if I was sure if I understood the cancellation policy, if I wanted to speak to a representative, to see if they could address any issues I might be having. I clicked through them all. When the final confirmation appeared, "Your cruise has been canceled, and a refund will be processed to your original form of payment," I felt a wave of emotion so complex, I could not name it. Part guilt, part power, part vindication, part fear. I sat with the feeling, letting it wash through me rather than pushing it away. This was the consequence of 30 years of built-up resentment and hurt finally finding an outlet. The airline tickets were the last and easiest to cancel. A few clicks, a few confirmation screens, and it was done. By 2 in the morning, every aspect of the Parker family vacation had been systematically dismantled. All that remained were confirmation emails about refunds, which I left in my father's inbox. Let them discover where their money had gone once they realized their trip had vanished. I cleared my browsing history, deleted any evidence of my activity from my computer, and logged out of all accounts. Then I took a long, hot shower, as if I could wash away the weight of what I had done. The next day I waited. I had taken the day off work, ostensibly sick but actually wanting to be fully present for what was coming. I cleaned my apartment, reorganized my bookshelf, did anything to keep my hands busy while my mind raced with anticipation and occasional doubt. Around noon, my phone dinged with a notification. The Parker family group chat, which had been mostly silent for days, suddenly exploded with activity. "Anyone else having trouble checking in for the flights tomorrow?" Michael had written. Then Natalie. "The airline website says, our reservation cannot be found." Then my father just got off the phone with American Airlines. "They say our tickets were canceled. There must be some mistake." I watched the panic unfold, in real time, my heart pounding. This was really happening. They were discovering piece by piece that their vacation had disappeared. I felt a surge of dark satisfaction, followed immediately by a wave of anxiety. What had I done? But it was too late to turn back now. The dominoes were falling. My mother texted next. "Richard just called Royal Caribbean. Our cruise booking is gone too. All of it. They said it was canceled 3 days ago, and refunds are being processed. How is this possible?" The group chat devolved into chaos, accusations, theories, panic. Had their identities been stolen? Was it a computer glitch? Should they call the police? No one suspected me. Why would they? Jessica, the family doormat, the perpetual people-pleaser, would never do something like this. Until my phone rang displaying my father's name, and I knew the moment of truth had arrived. I let the phone ring 3 times before answering, using those seconds to compose myself. "Hello," I said, injecting just the right amount of casual curiosity into my voice. "Jessica." My father's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "We have a situation here." "Oh, what is going on?" I asked, the picture of innocence. "Someone has canceled all our flights and the cruise. Everything. We are at the airport and they are telling us we have no tickets, no reservations, nothing." I could hear the background noise of the airport announcements over the PA system, the murmur of crowds. I imagined my family standing in the check-in area, suitcases piled around them, the slow realization dawning that they were not going anywhere today. "That is terrible," I said, keeping my voice level. "How could that happen?" "I do not know," he exploded. "The airline says the cancellations came from my account. The cruise line says the same thing. Someone accessed my accounts and canceled everything." "That is bizarre," I said. "When did this happen?" 3 days ago, apparently. We did not know because the confirmation emails went to my spam folder or something. I need you to help us figure this out. Call the credit card company and see if they can track the refunds while we try to rebook." This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. The moment to stand up for myself after a lifetime of taking whatever scraps of affection they offered. "I do not think I can do that," I said calmly. "What? Why the hell not? We are in crisis here, Jessica." "Well," I said, drawing out the word, "it is a family vacation, right? For real family. I would not want to intrude." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could practically hear the gears turning in my father's head as he processed what I was saying. "What did you do?" he finally whispered, his voice deadly quiet. "I simply respected your wishes," I replied. "You made it very clear I was not part of this family vacation, so I made sure I was not involved in any way." You canceled our trip. How could you? How dare you?" His voice rose with each word until he was shouting. In the background I could hear my mother asking what was happening, Natalie demanding the phone. "The same way you have dared to exclude and hurt me for 30 years, I said, my voice still remarkably calm. "The same way you dared to laugh about me behind my back. The same way you dared to plan to lie to me about your departure date. That is, he sputtered. That email thread was very illuminating, I continued. The one labeled, Jessica not included. I particularly enjoyed Michael's anecdote about how awkward it was pretending to want me at Ashley's graduation party. More silence then. You hacked my email. I will sue you for this. I will have you arrested. I did not hack anything, I corrected him. You used my computer, saved all your passwords, and never logged out. If anyone committed a violation, it was you of my privacy, in my home, on my personal computer. The phone was apparently grabbed from my father because suddenly Natalie was screaming in my ear. You psychotic bitch. You have ruined everything. Do you know how much the kids were looking forward to this? Do you know how much money this cost? Yes, actually, I do know exactly how much it cost, I replied. And you will be getting all of it back. The refunds should hit Dad's credit card within 5 to 7 business days. This is not about the money, she shrieked. It is about you being a vindictive, jealous, pathetic. I cut her off. No, Natalie. This is about 30 years of exclusion and cruelty. This is about me finally standing up for myself. I hung up as she was mid-sentence, my hand surprisingly steady. Then I turned off my phone entirely, knowing it would soon be blowing up with calls and texts. 10 minutes later, my landline rang, the number only Sarah and my workplace had. I answered cautiously. Jessica, it is Lauren, Michael's wife. Lauren was the last person I expected to hear from. We had always been cordial, but never close. I got your number from Sarah's Instagram profile, she explained. Listen, I am not calling to yell at you. I just wanted to say, I get it. You do? I asked, genuinely surprised. I have watched how they treat you for years, she said, her voice low, as if she was somewhere she might be overheard. It is awful. And what they said at dinner about the cruise being for real family, I have never been so embarrassed to be associated with them. Her words brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thank you for saying that. I am not saying what you did was right, she continued, but I understand it, and for what it is worth, Michael is not as bad as he seems in those emails. He goes along with Natalie and your dad, because it is easier, but he feels guilty about it. Not guilty enough to ever stand up for me, I pointed out. No, she acknowledged, and that is on him. Anyway, I should go. They are trying to figure out if they can rebook anything, but it is not looking good. Just take care of yourself. Okay. And maybe do not answer your door for a few days. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, feeling strangely calm. The storm had broken, and I was still standing. Whatever came next, I had finally stopped being the family doormat. Over the next few hours, I watched the family group chat explode. From afar, my main phone still turned off. The messages ranged from furious accusations to practical discussions about what to do next. My mother sent several private texts to my turned-off phone, vacillating between guilt-tripping, "How could you do this to your family?" and tentative apologies. "We should have handled things differently." By evening, it became clear that they would not be able to salvage the vacation. The flights were fully booked for the next several days, and the cruise ship had already reallocated their cabins. The Grand Parker family vacation was officially canceled. That was when I finally turned my phone back on, ignoring the barrage of notifications, and sent a single message to the family group chat. It was a screenshot of the email thread about keeping the real departure date from me, with the subject line "Jessica not included" clearly visible. I added only one line of text. Next time you plan to exclude someone, make sure they do not have access to your accounts. Then I turned my phone off again and opened a bottle of wine. For the first time in my adult life, I had stood up to the Parker family and refused to accept their scraps. The feeling was terrifying, exhilarating, and strangely freeing all at once. 2 days later, I received a terse text from my father: family meeting, our house, Sunday at 2, be there. I showed the message to Sarah, who immediately shook her head. No way. That is an ambush waiting to happen. I have to go, I said. If I do not, I am just proving their narrative that I am unstable and vindictive. And if you do go, they will gang up on you, guilt trip you, and possibly even threaten legal action, Sarah countered. At least let me come with you. No, I said firmly. This is something I need to do alone. But I will prepare. And prepare I did. I scheduled an emergency session with my therapist, Dr. Reynolds, who had been helping me work through my divorce. We spent an hour discussing strategies for maintaining boundaries and not getting pulled into familiar family dynamics. Remember, Dr. Reynolds said, "You cannot control how they react. You can only control your own responses. Stay calm, speak your truth, and be prepared to leave if things become toxic." I also consulted with a lawyer friend who assured me that while my actions were ethically questionable, they were unlikely to result in successful legal action, especially given that my father had used my computer and remained logged into his accounts. By Sunday, I felt as ready as I could be. I dressed carefully in a simple blue dress that made me feel confident, drove to my parents' house and parked on the street rather than in the driveway, a small act of independence and a quick escape route if needed. The tension was palpable the moment I walked through the door. My parents, Natalie, Michael, and Ashley, were already seated in the living room, a united front. Only Lauren offered a small, encouraging smile from her place beside Michael. Before anyone could speak, I took the initiative. "I want to say something before we start," I said, remaining standing while they sat. "I know why we are here. I know you are all angry. But before you start telling me how terrible I am going to tell you why I did what I did." "This should be good," Natalie muttered. But my father silenced her with a look. "Fine," he said. "Say your piece." I took a deep breath and began listing the years of exclusion, the constant reminders that I was different, the subtle and not so subtle ways. They had made me feel like an outsider. I spoke calmly, citing specific examples: the Disney trip, when I was 9, the summer camps, the family photos, the graduation parties, the vacations. "For 30 years," I said, "I have tried to earn my place in this family. I have brought food to every gathering, given thoughtful gifts, listened to your problems, celebrated your successes, and asked for almost nothing in return except to be included. And for 30 years, you have made it clear that I am not really a Parker." "That is not true," my mother interjected, tears already forming. "We have always loved you." "Love is not just a feeling, Mom," I replied. "It is actions. And your actions have consistently shown that I am less than Natalie, Michael, and Ashley, that I do not quite belong." "So, you ruined our vacation because you are jealous," Natalie snapped. "That is really mature." "No," I said, turning to her. "I canceled your vacation because when I expressed excitement about going, you publicly humiliated me. You said, 'Oh, you thought you were coming,' with that sneer you have perfected over the years. And Dad backed you up by clarifying it was for real family." "It was just a joke," my father protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "No, it was not," Lauren said, suddenly surprising everyone. "It was cruel and you all know it." Natalie rounded on Lauren. "Stay out of this. You are not even a blood relative." "Neither is Jessica," Lauren shot back. "But she has been part of this family longer than I have. And I have watched all of you, except maybe Michael, sometimes treat her like an unwanted houseguest for years." The room erupted into chaos. Natalie yelling at Lauren, my mother crying harder, my father attempting to regain control of the situation. Ashley, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. "Can we all just calm down?" she pleaded. "Jessica, what you did was wrong. You know that, right?" Yes, I acknowledged it was wrong. It was vindictive and petty and probably illegal, technically speaking. But it was also the first time in my life I have stood up for myself with this family. And frankly, it was the only way to make you all actually see me. "See you," my father repeated incredulously. "We have done nothing but try to include you since you were 3 years old." "That is not true, Richard," my mother said quietly, surprising everyone. "We have not tried hard enough. Not nearly hard enough. My father stared at her in disbelief. Eleanor, what are you talking about? I am talking about the fact that, when we adopted Jessica, you never fully accepted her, my mother said. Decades of unspoken truth finally emerging. You went along with it because I wanted another child and could not have one biologically after Ashley, but your heart was never in it, and the children followed your lead, especially Natalie. The room fell silent. This was not what anyone had expected, least of all me. That is ridiculous, my father blustered, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Guilt, perhaps, or the discomfort of being seen too clearly. Is it, my mother challenged? Remember how you refused to take time off work when we first brought her home? How you would only ever call her the girl for those first few months? How you looked for every opportunity to point out how different she was from our biological children? Natalie shifted uncomfortably. I did not know that, she said, glancing at me. You were 7, my mother replied. You picked up on your father's attitudes. That is all. Children do that. Do not blame me for how they turned out, my father said angrily. I am not blaming you for how they turned out, my mother said. I am blaming you and myself for how we treated Jessica, and I am saying it is time we acknowledged it. The conversation shifted then from my wrongdoing in canceling the cruise to the deeper issues in our family dynamic. Michael admitted he had always felt uncomfortable with how I was treated, but had been too cowardly to say anything. Ashley confessed she had often been deliberately oblivious, because it was easier than confronting the unfairness. Only Natalie remained largely unrepentant. I still think what you did was unforgivable, she told me, and I am not going to pretend otherwise just because everyone else is having some kind of kumbaya moment. I am not asking for forgiveness, I replied. I am asking for acknowledgement and change. The conversation continued for hours, sometimes heated, sometimes tearful, occasionally even productive. Old resentments surfaced, not just mine but others as well. The picture that emerged was of a family built on shaky foundations with unhealthy dynamics that had affected everyone, not just me. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself emotionally exhausted, but strangely empowered. For the first time, I was not trying to make myself smaller to fit into the Parker family. I was insisting on my right to exist fully within it, or to walk away if that was not possible. Finally, as the conversation began to circle back on itself, I stood up. I think I have said everything I came to say, I announced, and heard everything I needed to hear. Where we go from here is up to all of us, but I want to be clear about something. I am done accepting scraps of affection and inclusion. Either I am part of this family fully, completely, without qualifications or jokes or exclusions, or I am not. And if I am not, that is okay, because I have realized I can make my own family with people who value me. I reached into my purse and pulled out 2 items I had brought with me. A small silver locket my mother had given me for my 16th birthday, and the Parker family cookbook that had been passed down through generations, but never officially given to me. I placed them carefully on the coffee table. These have always meant a lot to me, I said. But I cannot keep holding on to symbols of belonging to a family that does not want me. So I am leaving them here, until we figure out what we are to each other. Jessica. My mother began reaching for my hand, but I stepped back. I need time, I said, and I think you all do too. If you want me in your lives, really want me, not just tolerate me, you know where to find me. With that, I walked out, ignoring the calls for me to come back, the promises that things would be different. As I drove away, I felt a strange lightness. I had said my truth. I had stood my ground. Whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms. The first week after the confrontation passed in silence. No calls, no texts, no emails from any member of the Parker family. I alternated between relief that I was not dealing with their anger and fear that I had permanently severed all ties. Sarah checked on me daily, and my therapist helped me process the complex emotions that surfaced. "You have opened Pandora's box," Dr. Reynolds said during our session. "Family systems resist change, and you have forced a major disruption. Give them time to adjust." I threw myself into self-care, long walks in the park, cooking healthy meals, reconnecting with friends I had neglected during my marriage. I also began to consciously build what Sarah called my chosen family, people who valued me for who I was, not what role I could play in their lives. My colleague Thomas invited me to his book club, where I met people who shared my love of reading. My neighbor Maya and I started having coffee on Saturday mornings. Sarah introduced me to her cousin Alex, who had also gone through a difficult divorce. Slowly, I began to create a network of genuine connections. 10 days after the confrontation, my phone dinged with a text from Michael. "Can we talk? Just the two of us." We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown, that neither of us frequented regularly. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes, and a nervous energy as he fidgeted with his cup. "I owe you an apology," he began, without preamble. "Not just for the cruise thing, but for years of standing by while you were treated as less than. I knew it was wrong, and I did nothing." "Why?" I asked simply. He sighed. "The path of least resistance, I guess. It was easier to go along with Dad and Natalie than to challenge them. And then it became habit." He looked up at me. "But that is explanation, not excuse. I was a coward, and you deserved better from me." It was the first genuine apology I had ever received from a member of the Parker family, and it cracked something open inside me, a space where forgiveness might eventually grow. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "It means a lot." "Lauren has been reading me the riot act," he admitted with a rueful smile. "She says she has been biting her tongue about how you are treated for years, and she is done staying silent." This made me laugh. I always liked Lauren. "She likes you too," he said. "And so do I. You are my sister, Jessica. Not my adopted sister. Not my sort of sister. My sister, full stop. I am sorry I ever made you feel otherwise." We talked for over an hour, catching up on parts of each other's lives we had missed through years of surface-level interaction. For the first time, Michael asked me about my adoption, how I felt about it, what I remembered from before, whether I had ever wanted to find my birth parents. These were questions no one in the family had ever bothered to ask. As we were preparing to leave, Michael hesitated. "Mom wants to see you," he said. "She has been pretty torn up about everything. Dad too, in his way, though he is still struggling with admitting he was wrong." "And Natalie?" I asked. Michael grimaced. Natalie. She is still pretty angry, but the rest of us have been having some serious conversations about family dynamics. It is not comfortable, but it is necessary." I nodded, not yet ready to commit to another family gathering, but appreciative of the effort. "Tell Mom I will call her soon," I promised. Over the next few months, I began to cautiously rebuild relationships with some family members, while maintaining firm boundaries with others. Lauren became a genuine friend, texting regularly and meeting me for lunch every few weeks. My mother and I started having one-on-one coffee dates, where we slowly worked through decades of unspoken hurt and misunderstanding. "I failed you," she admitted, during one of these meetings. "I should have protected you more, advocated for you more. I let my fear of rocking the boat override my duty to you as your mother." "Why did you adopt me?" I asked the question I had wanted to ask my entire life. If Dad was so resistant, why go through with it? Her eyes filled with tears. "Because the moment I saw you, I knew you were meant to be my daughter. You were this bright, fierce little thing even at 3 years old. I fell in love instantly." She reached across the table to take my hand. "I just was not strong enough to make everyone else see what I saw." My father was slower to come around. His pride had taken a double hit, first from me canceling the cruise, then from having his long-term treatment of me publicly challenged. But even he eventually reached out in his own awkward way, asking if I would help him set up his new smartphone. "I do not trust those guys at the store," he said gruffly when I arrived at their house. "They always try to sell me stuff I do not need." It was a flimsy excuse, but I recognized it as an olive branch of sorts. As I helped him transfer his contacts and showed him how to use various apps, he cleared his throat several times, as if about to say something important, only to ask another technical question instead. Finally, as I was preparing to leave, he blurted out, "Your mother says I never fully accepted you. She is right, and I am sorry for that." I froze my jacket half on. In 30 years, I had never heard my father apologize for anything. "When we adopted you," he continued, staring at the floor, rather than at me, "I was afraid I would not be able to love you the same way I loved the children I had helped create. And then, when that fear became reality, I was ashamed. It was easier to keep you at a distance than to admit I was failing as a father." I did not know what to say, so I said nothing, letting him continue. "I am not asking you to forgive me," he said. "I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I did wrong, and I am trying to do better even at my age." It was not a perfect apology, but it was sincere, and it was a start. Natalie remained the holdout. She refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing, maintaining that I had overreacted to a little teasing, and that canceling the cruise was an unforgivable betrayal. I kept my distance from her, accepting that some relationships might never be healed. 6 months after the cruise that never happened, I received an invitation to Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house. I stared at the text for a long time, conflicted. Part of me wanted to decline automatically, to protect myself from potential hurt. But another part recognized the effort being made. "Are you going to go?" Sarah asked when I showed her the invitation. "I am thinking about it," I said, "but I would need some ground rules." I called my mother and laid out my conditions. It would be a smaller gathering, just immediate family. Natalie would be told in advance to keep her hostility in check, and at the first sign of jokes about my place in the family, I would leave. To my surprise, my mother agreed immediately. "Actually, Natalie and James are going to his parents this year," she said. "It will just be you, your father, me, Michael, Lauren, and Ashley." The Thanksgiving gathering was different from any family event I could remember. There was an awkwardness at first, everyone hyper-aware of dynamics that had previously gone unacknowledged. But there was also a genuine effort to connect, to listen, to include. My mother used the good china, the set that had always been reserved for special occasions, but somehow, never for events that included me. My father asked about my work with actual interest, rather than polite obligation. Ashley showed me pictures from her recent trip to Europe, without a single comment about how I would not understand or appreciate the experience. Most surprisingly, they had placed old family photos around the house, not just the usual ones featuring the biological children, but ones with me as well. Some I had never even seen before, like a snapshot of me at around 4 years old sitting on my father's shoulders at a park, both of us laughing. "Where did this come from?" I asked my mother, picking up the frame. "The attic," she admitted. "I found boxes of photos when I was looking for the Thanksgiving decorations. So many memories I had forgotten." She hesitated. "Or maybe chosen not to remember, because they did not fit the narrative we had created." As I looked around the table that evening, I realized that while we would never be a perfect family, whatever that meant, we were finally becoming an honest one. The facades were cracking, allowing authentic connection to tentatively emerge. In the months that followed, this new dynamic continued to evolve. Some days were better than others. Old habits occasionally resurfaced and needed to be addressed. My relationship with Natalie remained strained, though she eventually stopped actively antagonizing me, settling instead for a cold civility when we were forced to interact. But the most profound change was within me. I no longer measured my worth by the Parker family's acceptance. I had built a life rich with connections of my own choosing, friends who valued me, colleagues who respected me, even a promising new relationship with a kind man named Eric who had his own complicated family history. I still attended some Parker family events, but I did so by choice, not desperation. I set boundaries and held to them. I spoke my truth without apology. And most importantly, I recognized that family, true family, was defined by love and respect, not blood or legal documents. 1 year after the cruise that never happened, my father called to tell me they were planning another family vacation. "We would like you to come," he said formally. "If you want to, that is." "Thank you," I said. "Let me check my calendar and think about it." The old Jessica would have immediately said yes, pathetically grateful for the inclusion. The new Jessica needed time to consider what she wanted, what was healthy, what would bring her joy rather than anxiety. That evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset and contemplating the invitation, I realized how far I had come. The wound of exclusion would always be part of my story, but it no longer defined me. I had found my voice, my strength, and my true family, some related by adoption, some by choice, all by love. If you have ever felt like an outsider in your own family, I want you to know you are not alone. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people who are supposed to love us most. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who treated you unfairly? Share your story in the comments below. And if this journey of finding self-worth despite family rejection resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more stories of healing and growth. Thank you for being part of my chosen family, and remember, you deserve to be fully seen, accepted, and celebrated exactly as you are.